Imagine a world, maybe not some far-off fantasy land, but a future that's actually technologically getting closer.
Hmm.
A world where the daily grind, working just to survive is mostly gone.
That's the dream, isn't it? For ages, people have imagined being liberated from all that.
Exactly. A kind of utopia where machines do the hard stuff, the boring stuff, maybe even the dangerous stuff. And that frees us up for, I don't know, higher pursuits.
Right. And the thing is, with automation, robotics, generative AI especially, advancing so incredibly fast.
Yeah, exponentially.
This whole idea is moving out of sci-fi banks and, into the realm of actual possibility. We kind of have to think about what it means now.
And it's not just about the tech, is it? It's a huge rethink of, everything.
It really is, because this liberation, this dream coming true, it also brings this massive existential crisis.
Yeah.
Some people are even calling it a leisurely demise.
It's a leisurely demise. Wow.
Think about it. The things that give life shape, careers, workplaces, the rhythm of the week, they're all potentially obsolete.
Wow.
So if work as we know it mostly disappears, what fills that huge gap? Purpose, identity, meaning for billions of people.
That's the absolute core question, isn't it? And, it's not totally new. I mean, after World War II, sociologists were already kind of debating this. They saw early automation and worried if mass leisure would lead to flourishing or just aimlessness, social problems.
But the sources we looked at, they make it really clear. Today it's different. The urgency is way higher.
Why? Just the speed of change?
The scale and the speed, yeah. It's just completely unparalleled. This isn't like a minor tweak to society. It could be a full reboot.
Okay.
And that's really what we want to tackle in this deep dive.
Right.
We need to go beyond just the technology or, how we distribute wealth. The goal here is a kind of multidisciplinary look at this whole post-work horizon.
So, economics, sociology, psychology, the works.
Exactly. It's cultural. It's philosophical. It really forces us to radically reevaluate our relationship with work, with leisure, and fundamentally, what makes life meaningful.
Okay, so buckle up, everyone. We're diving deep. We'll look at the economic models, the huge social impacts, the psychological hurdles.
They're massive.
And, crucially, ways we might actually move towards, human potential blossoming rather than just purposelessness.
A renaissance, not a demise.
Exactly. It's a huge topic. So let's start with the foundation. How could an economy even work without work? Right? So imagine a world where basically everything you need is, essentially free. It sounds completely like science fiction, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. But when you dig into the sources, this idea of a post-scarcity economy is totally intertwined with the whole post-work concept. It sort of rewrites the basic economic rules.
Okay, unpack that. What does post-scarcity actually mean here?
What's fascinating, really, is seeing how this isn't just wishful thinking. It's built on specific, even if still speculative, technologies that are really pushing the limits of production.
Right.
So a post-scarcity economy isn't about zero limits on anything. It's more a theoretical state where most goods, most services can be produced so abundantly and with so little human labor.
Because machines are doing it.
Exactly. That they become super cheap or maybe even free for everyone. And the scale of this shift is seen as huge, like the third major disruption in human history.
After agriculture and the Industrial Revolution.
Precisely. This next wave is driven by information tech and increasingly automation.
Wow. So comparable to learning to farm or building the first factories, that's a mind-bending scale of change.
It really is.
But what technologies are we actually talking about? Is it like, Star Trek replicators suddenly appearing?
Not quite the Earl Grey hot scenario just yet, but the ideas are heading that way.
Yeah.
The sources point to some specific, pretty ambitious things.
Like what?
Okay, so first, fully autonomous industries. Think robots and AI handling everything in production.
From design to...
From initial design, complex manufacturing, predictive maintenance, even making copies of themselves, the machines.
Whoa.
Then there are things like self-replicating machines, the RepRap project, the 3D printer that can print most of its own parts.
Oh, yeah.
That's like an early glimpse. And then molecular nanotechnology.
Oh, okay, that sounds serious.
It's really out there.
Yeah.
Imagine tiny robots, nanoscale, manipulating individual atoms, building anything you need from the ground up, molecule by molecule.
So literally making something out of, almost nothing. Raw materials.
Pretty much. From raw ingredients and energy, it completely changes manufacturing. No more giant factories necessarily, just atomic assembly.
That capability alone would just turn everything upside down.
Totally. And for true post-scarcity, you need two other big shifts alongside that. First, massive amounts of renewable energy, solar is often mentioned.
Okay, makes sense.
And second, widespread use of circular economies. Think near-perfect recycling, minimal waste, sustainable production that doesn't just trash the planet.
Right, regenerative.
Exactly.
But, okay, here's a critical thing. Post-scarcity doesn't mean everything is abundant, right? Like
Yeah.
a unique painting or that perfect beachfront property or maybe, a really good therapist. Those still feel scarce.
That's a really important distinction. You're absolutely right. The experts writing on this stress that point. Some things will remain scarce.
Yeah.
Unique art, specific land, personal services needing that human touch. Even things like social status or reputation. Those probably keep their value because they can't be easily replicated.
Okay.
The core idea of post-scarcity is more about meeting everyone's basic needs, plus a lot of their material wants, without anyone having to work.
So survival and a decent amount of comfort are covered.
Exactly. And that's key because it explains why you might still have markets or ways to distribute things, but they wouldn't be the central driving force of society like they are now. It's less about managing scarcity, more about distributing abundance.
Okay, that makes sense. So moving into how we might actually manage that distribution. Universal basic income, UBI, comes up constantly. It feels like the go-to answer for jobs disappearing.
It does, yeah. It's definitely the most talked about bridge, perhaps.
The more you look into it, it's not so simple, is it?
No, not at all. And this is where the debate really gets interesting. Is UBI a real fix, tackling the root issues of inequality in that future? Or is it just, a Band-Aid?
Yeah.
A way to patch up the current system so it doesn't totally collapse?
Right. It forces you to ask what the economic system is even for.
Exactly. How tied are our policies to our deep down values? So just to be clear, UBI is basically the government giving every adult citizen a regular, unconditional chunk of money. Doesn't matter if you're working, rich, poor, everyone gets it.
Unconditional being the key word.
Crucial. And the idea isn't new. It's been kicked around for centuries by philosophers, economists.
Really? Centuries.
Oh, yeah. But it really hit the mainstream recently. Andrew Yang running for president with his freedom dividend idea, $1,000 a month, that really put it on the map for public debate.
Right, I remember that. So what are the main arguments for it? What are proponents hoping it achieves? It's more than just free money, presumably.
Oh, definitely. The main goals are kind of twofold. First, tackle poverty and economic insecurity head on, especially the kind caused by automation taking jobs.
The safety net.
A universal safety net, yeah. And second, maybe simplify or even replace existing welfare programs.
Yeah.
The ones that are often complex, bureaucratic, and sometimes carry a stigma.
Right, means testing and all that.
Exactly. So advocates say UBI wouldn't just cover basic needs. They think it would have knock-on benefits for health, physical and mental.
Yeah.
Less stress, better outcomes.
Right.
And beyond just surviving, it gives people financial security. Freedom, maybe, to go back to school, care for kids or elderly parents, start a small business, or do creative work, community work, stuff the market doesn't always value but is really important.
That all sounds incredibly positive, almost like a solution to so many problems at once. But, I'm sensing a but. What are the big criticisms? The hurdles.
You're right to sense a but. There are definitely major criticisms and practical challenges. The biggest one, usually from economists, is the cost. Just astronomical.
Right. Where does the money come from?
Exactly. Critics say a UBI high enough to actually live on would need massive tax hikes, maybe politically impossible or just something people wouldn't vote for. A UK committee in 2017 basically said a useful UBI is unaffordable, and an affordable one isn't useful enough to replace current welfare.
A catch-22.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
It's a tough balancing act.
Yeah.
Effectiveness versus affordability.
And what about inflation? If everyone suddenly has more money, don't prices just shoot up? Especially for essentials like housing.
That's the inflation risk, yeah. A huge concern. If you pump cash into the economy without increasing the supply of goods and services, especially things where supply is tight, like housing,
Landlords just raise the rent.
potentially, yes. Landlords might just absorb the extra income, leaving tenants no better off. It could cancel out the benefit, especially for the poorest people.
And then there's the classic argument, if you pay people not to work, won't they just stop working? The disincentive problem.
Yep, that's always a big one. The fear is it shrinks the workforce, reduces economic output, shrinks the tax base needed to fund the UBI itself. A vicious cycle.
Is there evidence for that from pilot?
The evidence from UBI trials is Well, it's mixed. The big Finland pilot, for example, found UBI made people happier, healthier, less stressed.
Okay, that's good.
But it didn't really have a big impact on whether they got jobs or not. So maybe the disincentive isn't as huge as feared, but it wasn't definitively disproven either. The jury's still out. And finally, you just can't ignore the politics. Support for UBI is really divided. Different demographics, income levels, political ideologies, they all see it differently. Building the broad consensus needed to actually implement it is a massive political mountain to climb in most places.
Okay, so when we look at these different economic ideas for a post-work world, it's clear they're coming from really different philosophical places. Comparing UBI with something like fully automated luxury communism. I mean, the names alone tell you something.
Right. Stepping back, it's not just about policy details. It's about the fundamental purpose of the economy. Is it to manage scarcity and make profits within the current system? Or is it about distributing abundance and helping everyone flourish, even if that means moving beyond the current system?
So UBI is more about fixing the current system.
Often seen that way, yeah. Managing automation's effects within capitalism. But more radical ideas say the tech changes demand we move beyond capitalism entirely. And the most provocative of those is Fully Automated Luxury Communism, FALC. Aaron Bastani's book from 2019 really popularized it.
Fully automated luxury communism. It's a title designed to grab attention, for sure. Sounds utopian, maybe a bit scary depending on your politics. What's the core vision?
It definitely grabs attention. It's rooted in a modern Marxist view. The argument is that advanced tech, hyper-automation, AI, superabundant renewables, synthetic biology, create so much potential abundance that it just doesn't fit with capitalism, which needs scarcity to function.
Okay, so abundance breaks the old rules.
That's the idea. So FALC envisions a post-scarcity, post-capitalist world. Think drastically reduced work hours, maybe work becomes optional. Essential goods and services are decommodified free or nearly free, and everyone has access to things once considered luxuries. Top healthcare, education, advanced tech, easy transport.
Wow.
The core idea is using automation's power for the collective good, not private profit. Reorganizing society based on equality so everyone benefits from the abundance.
It's a total rebuild, not just a patch. Hugely ambitious, revolutionary even.
Yeah.
How's it been received?
Well, it's been praised for being bold, optimistic, offering a hopeful vision instead of the usual doom and gloom about automation killing jobs. A kind of modern socialist ambition.
There's always a but.
Big buts. It's drawn major criticism. A key one is, where's the plan for getting there? How do you actually transition from global capitalism, with all its power structures and vested interest, to FALC? Critics say the book lacks a solid theory of social change. It doesn't really grapple with power, class struggle, maybe revolution needed to dismantle the old system.
So it's more a vision than a roadmap.
Kind of, yeah. It leaves a big how-to gap. And some critics see it as too reliant on technology driving the change automatically. Technological determinism may be downplaying human choices in politics.
What about the luxury part and the environment? Does FALC address the ecological cost of all this abundance?
That's another major criticism. Does it really account for the environmental impact of potentially massive industrial expansion, even with renewables? Past tech leaps often came with huge ecological costs. Critics argue FALC doesn't fully explain how it avoids those pitfalls or stays within planetary limits. That's a big unresolved question.
Okay, so we have UBI trying to smooth the edges of capitalism facing automation, and FALC wanting a whole new system. It really feels like these represent a fundamental fork in the road for how we deal with this post-work potential.
That's a perfect way to put it. The debate between them shows these aren't just technical policy choices. They're about deep ideology. UBI can be seen as reformist to keep the market economy going by making sure people can still consume. It helps distribute wealth without necessarily challenging who owns the means of production.
So it could end up just propping up the system, maybe subsidizing low wages.
That's a critique, yes. Stabilizing capitalism, not transforming it. FALC, on the other hand, says that kind of stabilization is impossible or undesirable because the technology makes scarcity obsolete. It demands moving beyond capitalism entirely. So the choice isn't just how to fund a jobless society, but what's the point of the economy? Managing scarcity for profit or distributing abundance for human flourishing? That's the fundamental question.
That whole discussion about identity really hits home. Okay, let's unpack this. For so many of us, myself included, if someone asks, "What do you do?" the first thing out of my mouth is my job title.
It's almost automatic, isn't it?
Totally. So what happens when that answer just isn't there anymore? The source material is really clear. If work fades like the central thing in life, the social change is just as huge as the economic one.
It's incredible how deep work runs in our sense of self, how it provides the main story for our lives. And that really points to a massive psychological and social shift society would have to somehow manage.
Yeah.
For centuries, jobs haven't just been about money. They've organized society,
Yeah.
shaped how we spend our time, who we think we are, our social status, our daily routines, even our community.
Our place in the world.
Exactly. So a fully automated workforce, even if it brings freedom, it threatens to cut that basic link between what you do and who you are.
Yeah.
It's great uncoupling, as the sources call it. It's a huge potential challenge to the social fabric.
And we've seen previews of this, haven't we? Like in deindustrialized areas. When the main industry leaves town.
Oh, absolutely. Tragic examples. Rust Belt towns, mining villages, fishing ports. When the main industry collapses, it's not just jobs lost.
No, it's everything.
It tears the whole community apart. People who identified with their trade, their union, making something tangible, suddenly that identity is gone. Community pride vanishes.
Yeah.
Collective identity breaks down. You often see economic stagnation, people feeling alienated, towns decaying.
And the psychological impact is devastating.
Immense. Higher rates of mental health problems, substance abuse, this deep sense of failure, even if it wasn't their fault. So in a post-work future, that kind of localized tragedy could become generalized.
Yeah.
A society-wide issue.
So it's not just about figuring out how to hand out money. It's about finding new ways for people to feel valued, to have purpose, ways that society actually recognizes.
That's the crux of it. The big sociological challenge is renegotiating the social contract. What does it mean to be a contributing member of society if machines do most of the productive stuff? We need new social scripts, new value systems that recognize contributions beyond paid work, just to preserve dignity and purpose. We have to actively build those new pathways.
The sources really lay out a stark possibility here. A post-work world could be more equal, but it could also create even deeper, maybe more rigid social divides. It sounds like dystopian sci-fi, but the analysis suggests it's a real risk if we're not careful.
Yeah, and that really brings up the urgent question. How do we stop this leisurely demise scenario where freedom for some means precariousness and irrelevance for everyone else? Automation isn't neutral. We're already seeing it widen the gap.
How so?
Well, high-skilled workers, especially in tech, often see their productivity and wages soar. They benefit. But low-skilled workers, whose jobs are easier to automate, they face shrinking prospects, stagnant wages. It reinforces existing class divisions and can create new, harder-to-escape traps.
And it's not just skills, right? The sources mention gender impacts too.
A really critical point, often missed.
Yeah.
Many jobs traditionally held by women, admin support, data entry, customer service, retail, are highly vulnerable to automation. At the same time, the high-paying AI and tech fields, still heavily male-dominated, so you could get this double whammy. Women disproportionately lose jobs while men dominate the new high-value sectors. That could seriously widen the gender pay gap and entrench inequality in terrifying new ways.
And then the biggest fear, the one that really feels like a novel, this idea of neo-feudalism. It's not just being unemployed, it's being irrelevant.
Exactly. That's perhaps the most profound risk. A society split sharply.
Yeah.
A small elite owns and controls the automated production, the robots, the AI, the data, and then there's this vast majority who are economically redundant.
The useless class, some have called it. Chilling term.
It is chilling. And without really proactive wealth redistribution, without fundamentally redefining social value beyond market contribution, you could easily drift into this neo-feudal state. Most people become dependent on the tech capital of a few. It wouldn't be leisure in a good way. It would be mass precarity, powerlessness. Your status wouldn't depend on your efforts or talents, just your relationship to the automated systems. It's a stark warning about getting the transition wrong.
Okay, this makes you think. If everyone theoretically has loads of free time, what do we do? And maybe more importantly, how do we signal status or success? The sources point to this fascinating old book by Thorstein Veblen, The Theory of the Leisure Class, from way back in 1899.
Veblen's work is incredibly insightful here. A key takeaway is this potential inversion of scarcity. Looking at the bigger picture, his ideas really challenge our basic assumptions about what society values and how status works.
So what did Veblen say?
He looked at historical elites, feudal lords, Gilded Age tycoons, and how they used work, being exempt from work, to show off their status. He came up with two key ideas. Conspicuous leisure, basically wasting time on non-productive stuff just to show you're rich enough not to work,
Okay.
and conspicuous consumption, spending lavishly on stuff to display your economic power. For Veblen's leisure class, things like learning dead languages or mastering complex etiquette weren't necessarily valuable in themselves, they were signals. Signals that you belonged to a class that didn't need to do productive labor.
So their hobbies were basically expensive ways of saying, look how much time and money I can waste because I don't have to work. Status symbols.
Precisely. And Veblen's analysis poses this really awkward question for a post-work future. What happens if everyone has abundant leisure? Does leisure itself stop being a status marker?
Good question.
The risk Veblen highlights is that society gets stuck in this struggle for status, but fought differently. Instead of leisure being the signal, the competition shifts to what you do with your leisure and how visibly you do it.
Yeah.
You could end up with this culture of frantic, maybe meaningless, competitive consumption of experiences, of goods, not for real enjoyment, but just to keep up, to signal status.
Like a social media feed gone wild, a constant treadmill of showing off your amazing leisure activities. The sources mentioned a sci-fi story that captures this, right?
Frederick Pohl's The Midas Plague. It's a brilliant satire. In his future, robotic overproduction is so extreme that the lower classes are forced to consume constantly bigger houses, more gadgets, just to keep the economy from collapsing under the weight of all this stuff being made.
Wow, consumption as a burden, not a privilege. That's Veblen inverted.
Exactly.
So, if material things, even luxuries, lose their status because automation makes them easy to get, what becomes valuable? What's the new status game?
That's the deeper dynamic Veblen helps us see. The inversion of scarcity. His original idea was based on material scarcity, wasting resources showed wealth. But in a post-scarcity world, if anyone can 3D print a designer object or access infinite digital content, owning that stuff doesn't make you special anymore.
Right. The value evaporates if it's not exclusive.
Exactly. So what becomes the new scarce and therefore valuable commodity? It's the things machines can't easily replicate.
Like,
Human attention, authentic experiences, real creativity, original thought, mastery of complex human skills that take years of dedication.
okay, things that require genuine human effort and time.
Precisely. And this suggests a potential split in a future leisure society. You might have one group caught in that Veblenian trap, passive consumption of mass-produced entertainment, digital distractions, the leisurely demise. But you might also see a new leisure elite emerge. Their status wouldn't come from what they own, but from what they can do, what they create, who they become. They'd engage in what sociologist Robert Stebbins calls serious leisure.
Serious leisure? Like what?
The dedicated pursuit of an amateur interest, a hobby, volunteering, that's so substantial and challenging. It's almost like a career in itself. Mastering an instrument, deep scientific study, high-level craft. In that scenario, the ultimate status symbol isn't stuff. It's a meaningful, self-directed life. Purpose you've built yourself.
And this leads right into the psychological side of things.
Yeah.
This picture gets really compelling here. We usually think of boredom as, just a minor irritation, easily fixed. But the research suggests it's much more serious, especially if we're talking about a future with potentially vast amounts of unstructured time.
Yeah, the whole viability of a post-work future really hinges on people's internal psychological experience. Take away work with its routines, demands, social interactions, and you create this potential vacuum, a psychological void.
And that raises a huge question, doesn't it? If people are financially secure, comfortable, but just empty inside, adrift, have we really solved anything?
Exactly. Have we just swapped one set of problems for another? The psychological data is really clear. Humans have this fundamental need for purpose, for engagement, for challenge. And boredom, while we dismiss it, the research shows it's complex, often debilitating.
So what is boredom clinically?
It's defined as this unpleasant state where you feel a pervasive lack of interest and find it hard to concentrate. It's not just having nothing to do. It's this mismatch between your desire for mental stimulation and the environment failing to provide it meaningfully.
It's like an itch you can't scratch, a frustrated desire for engagement.
Precisely. And psychologists distinguish between temporary state boredom, like waiting in a queue, and chronic trait boredom, a persistent tendency to feel this way.
And it's the chronic kind that's the real threat here, the leisurely demise boredom.
That's the one. Chronic boredom is strongly linked to a whole host of nasty stuff. Depression, anxiety, loneliness, hopelessness, substance abuse. It messes with motivation, reduces your ability to feel pleasure, gets in the way of achieving goals. It traps you. And people hate feeling bored. There was that striking study where participants actually chose to give themselves mild electric shocks rather than just sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes.
They preferred physical pain to boredom. That's alarming. It really shows how deeply we need engagement.
It really does. And it highlights the risk. In a post-work world with tons of unstructured time, if people lack the inner resources, curiosity, discipline, creativity, or the external opportunities for meaningful activity, you could genuinely face a public health crisis rooted in chronic boredom and its fallout. That psychological void is a serious threat to well-being.
Stepping back again to a more philosophical view, this whole challenge forces us to wrestle with some seriously deep questions. It really does feel like we'd all need to become philosophers in our daily lives. Existentialism seems particularly relevant here.
It really puts the stakes in perspective, doesn't it? Taking work away isn't just an economic tweak. It's like putting humanity in a philosophical crucible. It forces a level of self-reflection, of meaning-making that most people haven't historically needed to engage with so directly.
So what's the core existentialist idea that applies here?
A central one, famously from Jean-Paul Sartre, is existence precedes essence.
Okay. What does that mean?
It means unlike, say, a hammer, which is made for a purpose, humans aren't born with a predefined purpose or nature. We're just thrown into existence, as Sartre put it. And then we're radically free and totally responsible for creating our own essence, our own meaning through the choices we make and the actions we take.
That's heavy. No instruction manual, no preset purpose. We just have to build it ourselves from scratch.
Exactly. And this is where work in our current society has played this huge, maybe unacknowledged role. The daily grind, having a job, it's acted as a kind of buffer against that dizzying freedom and the anxiety that comes with it.
How so?
A job gives you a ready-made essence. You're a doctor, a teacher, a plumber. It comes with roles, responsibilities, expectations, a seeming purpose. It provides structure, rhythm, a comfortable external framework for your identity.
Right, it tells you who you are and what you're supposed to do each day. So if work largely vanishes, that framework disappears.
That external scaffolding gets ripped away, and humanity is left staring right into its existential condition, condemned to be free, as Sartre said.
Condemned. Why condemned?
Because that absolute freedom, with no preordained meaning from God or nature or tradition, it's terrifying. It's the source of what existentialists call angst or dread. This deep anxiety that comes from realizing you are totally, inescapably responsible for creating meaning in a universe that seems inherently meaningless or indifferent.
Wow. Okay, so the challenge then becomes?
The challenge is to live an authentic life, to courageously face that freedom, take responsibility, and build your own meaning through projects you choose. The alternative is bad faith.
Bad faith.
It's a kind of self-deception, pretending you're not free, blaming circumstances or society or your upbringing for your life, instead of owning your choices, seeking refuge in conformity, just doing what everyone else does. It's avoiding the anxiety of freedom by denying you have it.
I see. So a post-work society becomes the ultimate test of authenticity. Without the script of work, we're forced to choose. Confront our freedom and create meaning, or drift into bad faith.
Precisely. It forces the question. Without work defining us, what will we choose to become?
This really does flip our usual thinking upside down. If we want a post-work future that's actually fulfilling, just giving people money isn't enough. We need to think about what actually makes humans flourish. Existentialism highlights the problem, but what does psychology say about the solution?
It's fascinating how the science really backs up the idea that there's more to life than just material comfort. And it poses that critical question for anyone planning this future.
Right.
Are we aiming for a world where people just exist, comfortably numb perhaps, or one where they genuinely flourish?
Right.
Modern psychology, especially research into well-being, has moved way beyond just happiness. It identifies core psychological needs for a flourishing life. Self-determination theory is a big one here.
What does that say?
It proposes 3 innate universal needs. Satisfy these and you thrive. They are autonomy, feeling in control of your life, making your own choices. Competence, feeling effective, capable, mastering challenges. And relatedness, feeling connected to others, belonging, caring, and being cared for.
Autonomy, competence, relatedness. Okay.
So a post-work society has to be structured to give people opportunities to meet these needs. It's fundamental.
That makes sense. It's not just about what we don't have to do anymore, but what we can achieve, master, and how we connect. And I saw something really striking in the sources about job satisfaction, that it's not the driver we think it is.
That was a really profound finding, yeah. It challenges a core assumption many of us have. A major international study found that your general life satisfaction is actually a much stronger predictor of future job satisfaction than the other way around.
Wait, so being happy in life makes you happier at work more than a good job makes you happy in life?
Essentially, yes. People with higher general life satisfaction were significantly more likely, like 32% more likely, to see their job satisfaction increase over time, whatever their job was initially. It strongly suggests that a fulfilling personal life built on that autonomy, competence, relatedness is often the foundation for professional satisfaction, not the result of it.
Wow, that turns the whole get a good job, then you'll be happy idea on its head. So if work isn't the main source of well-being, what is fulfillment, psychologically speaking, beyond a job title?
Psychology defines fulfillment as this cognitive and emotional experience, a sense of wholeness, of fit, of value towards yourself, your life, and your impact.
Okay, that sounds comprehensive. What does it involve?
It includes being true to yourself, living authentically, finding deep meaning and purpose in what you do day to day, feeling a sense of personal growth, mastering things, and crucially, making a positive contribution, leaving some kind of legacy, connecting to something bigger than yourself. That gives us a scientifically grounded picture of what post-work purpose could look like.
And if we tie this back to UBI or other economic fixes, it highlights a potential meaning gap, doesn't it? Money provides the means, but not the meaning.
Exactly. That's the critical link and the potential danger. UBI deals with material survival, economic security. It gives you the means to live, but it doesn't automatically give you the meaning of life. The psychological data, especially that life satisfaction drives job satisfaction finding, strongly suggests that just removing financial worries won't magically create a fulfilled population. Work often acts as a container, a place we pour our existing well-being and purpose into, rather than being the primary source of it.
So if you take away that job container, the responsibility for creating meaning falls elsewhere.
Entirely. It falls onto other life structures.
Yeah.
Community, family, personal projects, civic action, individual pursuits. And here's the big warning. If you implement something like UBI without also investing heavily in the social and educational infrastructure that helps people build autonomy, competence, and relatedness, you risk creating a society that's financially stable but psychologically adrift, prone to exactly the boredom, anomie, depression the research warns about. It shows crystal clear that the social and psychological solutions are just as vital, maybe even more vital, than the economic ones for achieving real human flourishing.
That's a powerful insight, a real call to rethink priorities. Okay, moving into the fourth part of our dive. It's clear that if we want a flourishing post-work world, we have to completely change how our culture views leisure. It's not about laziness or just killing time, right? It's something much bigger.
Absolutely. Stepping back, this really is a call to flip our modern values on their head.
Yeah.
Maybe the things we see as extras, learning, creating, connecting, should actually be the main point of a well-lived life.
Yeah.
And to build that new philosophy of leisure, we can actually look back to the ancient Greeks.
To Plato and Aristotle.
Exactly. For them, leisure school, the root of our word school, wasn't idleness. Not at all. It was the essential condition for achieving eudaimonia, true human flourishing, living virtuously.
So leisure was necessary for the good life.
Essential. It meant freedom from the daily grind of just getting by. Freedom to engage in what they saw as the highest human activities.
Like what?
Contemplation, philosophy, art, learning, and participating in civic life, the polis. Aristotle even said, "We are busy that we may have leisure." Work was just the means. Leisure was the end, the purpose of life itself.
Wow, that's a radical reframing from our perspective. Work is the mean, leisure is the goal.
Exactly. And that classical ideal gives us a powerful framework for a post-work society. It suggests the goal shouldn't be endless entertainment, but the widespread cultivation of human excellence.
And fascinatingly, modern science actually backs this up, doesn't it? It's not just philosophical. Active leisure is genuinely good for us.
It's quite remarkable how the science validates that ancient wisdom, which really poses the question, if meaningful leisure is so good for us, how do we make it accessible and valued for everyone, not just a privileged few? Loads of studies show that engaging in enjoyable, self-chosen leisure activities is strongly linked to all sorts of positive outcomes.
Like what specifically?
Lower stress, better moods, lower heart rates, greater life satisfaction, higher overall psychological well-being. It consistently shows up.
So it acts like a buffer against stress.
Exactly. A protective buffer. Research during the COVID pandemic, for instance, found that people who kept up their preferred leisure activities didn't report more depressive symptoms, even with all the extra stress.
How does it work? Why is it protective?
Well, mentally engaging leisure seems to break that negative cycle of rumination, endlessly dwelling on problems, which is common in anxiety and depression. It absorbs your attention, offers a mental escape, lets you recharge, builds resilience.
Makes sense.
And some studies show specific benefits, like physical activity or sports are linked to better self-acceptance, better relationships, a stronger sense of purpose.
Okay.
So the benefits are broad and deep: mental, emotional, physical.
Okay, so if leisure is so important, we need to be clear about what kind of leisure we're talking about. It seems crucial to build on Aristotle's idea that amusement isn't the same as true leisure. Not all free time is equal.
Absolutely critical. This is probably the most important shift needed. We have to consciously design a culture that values real flourishing, not just distraction. The source material offers a useful modern distinction. First, there's diversionary leisure. Think amusement.
Okay, what falls into that category?
Mostly passive, consumptive stuff, aimed at distraction, recovery from being tired or stressed. Mindlessly scrolling social media, binge-watching TV, low-engagement entertainment.
Stuff to just switch off with.
Exactly. And it has its place. We need relaxation.
Yeah.
But it doesn't build long-term fulfillment or meet those deeper needs for competence or purpose. It's kind of like Jeremy Bentham's idea: pushpin is as good as poetry if they give the same amount of pleasure. Quantity over quality.
Okay, so that's diversion. What's the alternative? The kind that leads to flourishing.
That's developmental leisure. This is the cornerstone of a meaningful post-work life. It's active, creative, challenging, often social. It involves learning and expressing skills, pursuing knowledge, contributing to community.
Give me some examples.
Mastering an instrument, learning a language, amateur science, volunteering for something you care about, community theater, serious sports training. You get the idea.
Yeah, things that require effort, skill, dedication.
Exactly. This aligns with Stebbins' serious leisure idea and with Aristotle's ideal of nurturing your mind, soul relationships. This is where you find sustainable purpose and identity if traditional work isn't there.
It sounds like a complete reversal from how we got here. How did we end up valuing work over this kind of fulfilling leisure?
That's the great historical inversion. In the ancient world, leisure was the peak. The Industrial Revolution completely shattered that. It created this rigid split: work time and non-work time. Work became the center of light, and leisure was just leftover time for recovery so you could work more.
The work ethic was born.
Precisely. Labor became a moral good in itself, and that evolved over centuries into today's workism, where being overworked is almost a status symbol. We started seeing leisure not as an opportunity, but as a problem. What will people do if they're not working? Fear of unrest, moral decay.
And that mindset is still strong. Busyness as a virtue. People feel guilty for relaxing sometimes. I bet some listeners feel they should be doing something productive right now instead of just listening.
It's a real cultural pressure, isn't it?
Yeah.
So a post-work society makes that whole framework obsolete. And the biggest danger, the sources warn, is carrying that industrial mindset. Leisure is a problem to be filled into this new era of free time.
Does that lead straight to...
The leisurely demise. A society filling the void with endless commercial distractions, manufactured digital addictions, rather than genuine fulfillment.
So the transition isn't just economic or tech, it's fundamentally cultural and philosophical.
That's the absolute critical point. The biggest task is a conscious, collective project. Dismantle the industrial work ethic and revive a modern version of the classical leisure ethic. Education, public policy, culture, all need reorienting. Not to train workers, but to teach, value, and enable developmental leisure as the new central purpose of a good human life. That's the great project ahead.
This really lays out the stakes clearly, doesn't it? It's not abstract theory. We're potentially heading down one of two very different paths. The source material contrasts this human renaissance idea with the leisurely demise.
And it immediately forces us to ask, which path are we on now? What
Yes.
choices are we making today that push us one way or the other? Let's look at the human renaissance vision first. Inspiring stuff.
What does it look like?
Economically, it's post-scarcity abundance. UBI, or maybe FLC, enables widespread freedom for self-development. Socially, it's egalitarian, community-focused. Status comes not just from wealth, but from contributing, from mastery.
An individual purpose.
Found in self-actualization, creativity, lifelong learning, that serious leisure we talked about. Technology is designed to augment human creativity, connection, problem-solving, and the culture. Its Aristotelian leisure is where you cultivate virtue and flourish.
That really does sound utopian, a goal worth aiming for. But then the dark side. The leisurely demise. What's the picture there?
Stark contrast. Economically, stagnation, hyper-inequality. UBI, if it exists, might just be a subsidy to keep people consuming cheap goods, benefiting only a few. Socially, it's deeply stratified. Tech elites versus a vast, redundant, useless class. social isolation, maybe even digital ghettos of passive consumption.
And purpose.
Defined by anomie, boredom, depression, frantic, status-driven consumption of trivial stuff, deep unhappiness. Technology is used for surveillance, control, creating addiction to keep people passive. And the culture is that Veblennian dystopia leisure is a competitive, wasteful display, not meaning. A truly grim alternative. We have to actively work to avoid that.
Okay, given everything about purpose and the dangers of meaninglessness, it seems obvious our whole idea of education needs a massive rethink. If getting a job isn't the main goal anymore, what is school actually for?
It's amazing, isn't it? Education shifts from just being a tool for the job market to being a foundation for flourishing itself. Looking at the bigger picture, it means completely reimagining why we learn.
So how does its purpose change?
If machines do most jobs, the sources argue education's main purpose becomes preparing people not for work, but for a life of well-lived leisure. A life rich in meaning, engagement, purpose.
That doesn't mean less rigorous, though.
No, definitely not less rigorous, just a different kind of rigor. Focused on cultivating uniquely human skills automation can't touch. Critical thinking, creativity, emotional intelligence, ethical reasoning, empathy.
Which means less focus on just STEM.
A move away from a narrow STEM-only focus, yes.
Yeah.
The liberal arts, philosophy, literature, history, the arts, they become absolutely essential, not optional extras.
Why? What do they give you for this future?
They teach you how to think critically, understand emotions, reason ethically, be creative. They give you the inner resources to navigate freedom constructively, to build your own meaning.
And what would schools look like?
The model might be like today's lifelong learning academies, but much bigger, more central. Institutions offering diverse, accessible courses for everyone throughout life. Global affairs, arts, sciences, personal development. Fostering communities around learning.
So education becomes an ongoing part of life, not just a phase you go through to get a job.
Exactly. An intrinsic part of a fulfilling life itself.
This sounds incredibly liberating. Imagine having the time and resources to really dive into these things. And a key part of fulfillment is feeling like you're making a difference, leaving a mark. So a post-work society needs to create and support new ways for people to contribute and find meaning.
Absolutely. And this raises that crucial question again. How do we build systems, institutions, funding, cultural values that genuinely recognize and reward these non-market contributions, make them as respected as work used to be?
So what are some of these new arenas for contribution?
Well, community building and civic engagement are huge. With more free time, people can invest energy in strengthening local ties, volunteering, mentoring, organizing events, participating in local government, caring for kids or elders.
Stuff that often gets squeezed out now by work demand.
Exactly. And these things directly build that sense of relatedness, purpose, impact, vitals for well-being in strong communities.
And creativity. Seems like abundance could fuel a massive artistic boom.
Totally. The arts are such a powerful source of fulfillment, identity, social commentary. A post-work society with economic security and a culture valuing development could see an amazing renaissance, providing the means for music, art, writing, performance. It opens up huge avenues for self-expression, skill building, shared meaning.
Beyond the arts.
The pure pursuit of knowledge, science, philosophy. Freed from commercial pressures, imagine citizen science projects, collaborative research, philosophical inquiry just for the sake of understanding. Pushing human knowledge forward, that's a potentially infinite source of purpose and legacy.
So looking ahead, it boils down to choices. It's not just what the tech can do, but what we choose for it to do, and how that affects us as humans. The sources emphasize this isn't predetermined. We're making choices now about AI design and rollout.
Yes, and that underscores our active role. It really brings home the stakes. We need to embed our deepest human values into the tech we create, make sure it reflects our hopes, not our fears. And to steer towards that human renaissance, those choices need a strong ethical framework.
Are there principles for that?
Oh, yes. International bodies like UNESCO have outlined core principles for AI ethics. Human rights, fairness, transparency, safety, human oversight. Sticking to those is crucial if AI is to serve humanity.
And there's a specific danger, a trap, to avoid in AI development.
Yes, analyst Eric Brynjolfsson warns about the Turing trap. That's where the main goal of AI development becomes just mimicking and replacing human abilities.
Why is that a trap?
Because focusing only on substitution drives down wages, devalues human skills, leads to displacement and distress. The better path, ethically and probably productively too, is designing AI to augment human capabilities. Creating intelligent tools that boost our creativity, enhance problem solving, improve collaboration, unlocking things neither humans nor machines could do alone. It requires a conscious shift in incentives for tech companies, investors, policymakers away from simple labor replacement towards human-machine partnership.
Making AI a partner, not just a replacement. How do we make sure that happens? Not just let tech evolve on its own, possibly in bad directions.
By ensuring human agency and democratic input, we need deep engagement from workers, citizens, diverse communities in designing and deploying AI, bringing in voices from labor, ethics, the arts, and crucially, maintaining ultimate human responsibility and accountability for what AI does.
Yeah.
The goal has to be automated systems that serve human purposes, empower us, expand our potential, not make us obsolete. It demands foresight, ethical leadership, not just passive acceptance.
Wow. That is definitely a lot to mull over, isn't it? This whole prospect, a world without work as we know it, it really forces us to face the biggest questions. What are we for? What makes life meaningful?
Indeed. It leaves us with a huge immediate responsibility. And that idea of a leisurely demise, abundance marred by boredom, distress, decay, it's not just sci-fi. It's a real risk, rooted in how much we rely on work for identity, structure, purpose.
But it's not inevitable, right? Automation doesn't automatically lead there.
No. As the deep dive showed, that outcome is more likely a result of passivity, a failure of imagination, a refusal to adapt our cultural values, rather than an unavoidable consequence of the technology itself.
So, economic problems, distributing wealth, providing security as tough as they seem solvable. We looked at UBI, post-scarcity ideas. There are pathways, even if they're debated.
The means to survive can likely be figured out, but the much bigger challenges we've explored is cultural and philosophical. It's that monumental task of dismantling the industrial work ethic
Which has defined us for centuries.
and replacing it with a revitalized leisure ethic, rooted in those classical ideals backed by modern psychology. That, the sources argue, is humanity's next great project.
A project involving completely reorienting education, not for jobs, but for flourishing, elevating new ways to contribute community, arts, knowledge, making them central to a meaningful life.
And making those conscious, ethical choices about technology, ensuring it augments us, frees our potential, rather than just replacing us.
So the future of work is really, at its heart, a choice about the future of leisure.
We can choose to fill the coming free time with passive consumption, algorithmic distractions, and basically live out our worst fears of purposelessness. Or we can choose to see this unprecedented freedom as the raw material to build something better, a more thoughtful, more creative, more connected, more profoundly human civilization than ever before.